and we're going to start rocking through these questions here. So I know Tim's not on the call right now, but Tim wrote in, he said, if you need a second fat loss phase, how long is the phase in between a fat loss phase and a recovery phase? And then what are some of the factors that can lengthen or shorten that phase? So to answer that question, how many fat loss phases does somebody need? The answer is as many as it takes to get you to where you want to be. And typically in a fat loss phase, I'll go about 16 weeks max, and then come out of that and do more of a recovery phase where we bring your metabolism back up. And the reason for that is it's also very individualized. So some people can stay in a fat loss phase a lot longer. And the way I determine that is, one, what is their calorie level at that point? So for instance, if I start somebody out at 2,400 calories and I take them through several drops and they get down to about 1,400 calories for a man, 1,200 calories for a woman, I don't want to keep them that low for much more than a couple of weeks, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks tops, because your metabolism is going to match whatever you eat, right? So as your metabolism slows down and starts to adapt to that, at that point, there's nowhere else to go. You can't drop your calories any lower than that. And so if somebody's at that place, I'm going to stop their fat loss phase, put them into a recovery phase, slowly start building their metabolic rate back up to where it was, you know, maybe back up to 2,000 calories, and then repeat that cycle again. So the distance between those phases is really going to be dictated by how does that person's body respond to me adding calories over the course of time. Meaning, if I start adding calories and they start gaining weight right away, then they need to hang there for a little bit longer until their weight stabilizes. And then we'll start to add calories onto that. And then once we build them back up for a while, then we'll go into another fat loss phase. The second part of that question is, what can lengthen or shorten a fat loss phase? So if you're in a fat loss phase and you're only 5 weeks into it and you're already cheating and going off the rails, you're not hitting any of your targets and you're just burned out, I'm going to take you out of that and I'm going to put you at maintenance, because if you're, it doesn't really matter where I set your calories. If you're going overboard all the time, then you're not ready for a fat loss phase yet. So the idea for me and what I tell everybody is, I want you to lose as much fat as you can while you're eating as much as you can. There's no reason to drop your calories as long as you're losing a good amount of body weight, which is about 1 to 2 pounds of fat per week. So if you're in that boat and you're like, gosh, I want to lose faster, you could, but you're going to lose muscle. So there's 2 ways to increase that deficit. One is to reduce calories, and the other one is to increase steps. So hopefully that answers Tim's question. And then Brent had asked to add on to that, you know, how long can you go on the first one as long as there isn't diet fatigue? And the answer to that one is you could go a lot longer than that. So Brent, your calories are high, right? You're not in a big deficit. So as long as you're losing weight and your calories are still at a pretty high level, you can keep going, right? I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It's when you start to cheat and when you start to plateau and you start to get really tired and your workouts suck and you're just like, I don't feel like doing this today. I don't feel like working out. Your sleep's disrupted, your hormones get disrupted. That's when you need to get out of a diet. Like, it just doesn't work anymore. And so you can really mess yourself up. And I see people stay in diet phases, like Gerard was in a diet phase at 800 calories for so long that it wrecked him, right? And nothing was working anymore. So the only way to get out of that place is come into a program and start slowly raising your calories back up, which is kind of the opposite of what you want in the beginning, because everybody wants to lose weight. And so when I say we need to rebuild your metabolic rate and raise your calories, they're like, oh my God, I'm going to gain weight. I'm like, doesn't matter. You have to do this or you're not going to lose any more weight down the road. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. Brent asks, does it matter what order we do our lifts in for each session? There are times when equipment is taken and we have to move a later exercise. We have to move to a later exercise and come back to the beginning. Any issues with that or alterations needed in those situations? So in general, if you're in the gym and you're at Planet Fitness and all the benches are taken up for 4 hours, or all the squat, well, they don't have squat racks, all the Smith machines are taken up, and I hear this a lot, then you need to make a pivot and go, all right, I'm training legs right now, I'm training chest right now, whatever it might be. Find a different exercise that's similar and go do that instead. But if you were in the gym and there were no limitations and you could do whatever you wanted to do, there is a reason for the order of the exercises. And typically, not always, but typically I'll program the big technical exercises first. So deadlifts, back squats, bent over rows, power cleans, snatches, things like that. And then as you get fatigued, we'll start to put in exercises that don't need as much stabilization. And then typically in the beginning of your program, we're going to do the exercises that can give you the biggest bang in strength gains. So, you know, I wouldn't want to do a dumbbell fly or a fly machine before I did a bench press, because then I'm going to pre-fatigue my chest and my strength's going to suck on the bench press. So yeah, there is a reason for it, but it's not, in a fat loss phase, not that big of a deal. As long as you get your workout in, you're good. If you're going for maximum strength, then the order matters more. And if you're going for maximum muscle building and you're not worried about fat loss, the order matters more. All right. Another question from Baldy. There are times when planning my meals a day ahead that I can get to my protein, fat, and carb goal without having enough calories to get to my calorie goal based on eating lean meats and fish. Can you tell us why it's important to hit all those and still equal the calorie goal? Or is it okay to be shy on calories if we nail the other three? So I've had this question asked several times in the last week, and it gets asked a lot, typically with people that are using MyFitnessPal. And the reason why is MyFitnessPal data is shit for the most part. And that's why I tell people, I really want you to use the in-app tracker, because in MyFitnessPal, any one of us could go in there and we could plug in our own food, chicken breast. And then I could put in 500 calories, but 10 grams of protein, 5 grams of fat, 1 gram of carbohydrate, which obviously doesn't add up. But most people aren't going to look at all those details. They're going to go, oh, there's chicken breast, pick it. And they add it to their journal. And then later on, they're looking at it going, why don't these numbers add up? And if you hit your carbs, fat, and protein, you're going to hit your calorie goals, because it's just math. That number has to add up and everything has to be equal. And if it doesn't, then one of your entries is off. It doesn't have the right data. So, yeah. So I want you to hit your calories, even if you're like, well, I'm really not hungry. And that can happen in the beginning, you know, where I might have you set at 1800 and you get to 1500 and you're like, I'm not really hungry. And you just stay at 1500 and you're losing weight and you're happy with that. The problem with doing that is you could still lose weight at 1800 calories. And now when you plateau there, I can drop you to, 1650, and then I can drop you again, and then I can drop you again. But if you're at 1500 and you plateau, there's nowhere to go other than down, which then becomes too low. Trey, my man, Trey, what are some different things you do to put your brain in the right frame of mind to crush being savage? Going back to things you mentioned, like a song or a smell that makes you crush it. So I don't know if you guys were on the call when I talked about smells, sounds, and things like that. So when I owned my gyms, I used to do presentations with anywhere from 40 to 100 people at one time in one room to sell them on my gym. And, the first few times I was super nervous because so many people were there and I'm like, oh my God, it was like going on stage, and I had a whole script, the whole bit. And after doing it a few times and seeing 80 or 90 people all go, I'm in, and sign up, I started to do some stuff with essential oils. So right afterwards, when I was all pumped up, like, yeah, I crushed it, I would go smell orange essential oil. And that smell would bring, every time I would smell that, I would do it before the next time I would go on stage and do these presentations. I'd smell that oil and it would bring back that feeling of, I just crushed this thing, and it would put me in the right mindset to do it again. So that's one thing that you can do. The other thing that I tell people to do is draw on pain, right? Pain's a very, very good motivator, and also draw on something that pisses you off. So for me personally, I'm super competitive. And if somebody tells me that I can't do something, I'm going to do everything in my power to smash them, right? I'm going to show them that I can. Just the way my brain was wired. And then as far as pain, I draw on pain a lot to push me to do things that I never thought I could possibly do. And everybody has pain. This isn't a story that I tell a lot of people, but my little boy, when he was 6, he drowned with his best friend and his best friend's mom. And that day, you can only imagine what that did. And I draw on that pain every single day. Every day when I feel like I can't do something, I draw on that pain and I'm like, I'm going to fucking crush this thing, because it's God versus the devil on something like that. And I told myself the devil is not going to take me out, put me on the sidelines. And so I have that written all over my place. I've got an arrow that points up, meaning God wins. So whenever I start feeling like I can't do something, I think about that. I'm like, fuck you, devil, excuse my language, but your ass is done. And that motivates me to push as hard as I can. So it's pain, or it's competition, or it's, you know, you can use smells, but whatever that driver is for you, think about it, and then just pull on it to make you push yourself, because you can always do more, right? You can always do more. All right, Miles, you asked a question. There's a lot of them on here. I'm going to blast through all of them. What is in protein powder and what makes one brand better than another? We know protein is important. Why not consume all protein through protein shakes and eat healthy after that? What's the difference in protein sources? I love lunch meat and seems super easy to get high quality protein here. Why not use that as a main source of protein? Okay, so the answer to that question is, what is in whey protein or protein powder? There's all different kinds of protein powders. You have whey protein, you have casein protein, you have all kinds of different vegetarian, vegan proteins. And for the most part, the whey protein it's a commodity. It's traded like corn. And most of that whey comes from 3 different places. Ascent Protein is a sister company of a larger company that produces most of the whey for all of these other companies. So all of these little brands out there, there's thousands of them. They're all buying their whey. Most of them are buying it from the same source. And then what they do is they private label it. They put their own packaging on it. They might process it a little bit more, add some sweetener to it, add some flavorings or what have you. But the whey itself is the same. Same thing with casein. It's all pretty much the same. And what you want to look for is a company that doesn't add a whole lot of extra shit to it. So when you look on the label and it says 1 serving is 30 grams, then look at the amount of protein that's in that serving. And if it says 20 grams of protein, but the serving size is 30 grams, what's the other 10 grams? Filler. So the more protein that's in it per serving that matches up with what that serving size is, the better it's going to be. And then heat destroys protein. So think about dairy products. It's basically, milk. And if you heat milk and boil it, it kills the enzymes and it kills the life in it. And so if you're eating dead food, it's not going to give you any life, right? So that's the answer on the protein. And then in terms of different types of proteins, well, first, yes, you could drink whey protein all day long and live off of it if you wanted to, as long as you're getting all your other nutrients. Not a problem. I don't think it's a great idea. I still like to chew food. I still like to eat real food, but you could do that if you needed to. And if people have digestive issues and they can't digest, then sometimes we'll put them on diets like that, where it is a liquid type diet. Different types of protein. So there's a scoring system out there called the DIAAS, Digestible Individual Amino Acid Score. And I'm going to post this in the group. It's a chart. And if you can see it, you won't be able to see it here, but it's a chart of all the different proteins. And what they've done is they've ranked them in order of which ones not only are the easiest to digest, but which ones produce the most muscle growth. And it's kind of surprising when you look at it, but whole milk powder is number 1 at 143. That's the highest score. And then you have milk protein concentrate comes in at 118. Whole milk comes in at 114. And that's, you might say, well, why don't I just drink milk? Well, a lot of people have dairy intolerances, and there's also a lot of sugar and carbs added and fat in those things. So think about the whey protein as being the same thing, but they strip out the carbs, they strip out the fat. And so whey comes in at 109. Eggs and beef are right in there with whey, right at 113 and 114. So those are going to be your best protein sources if, lean muscle gain is your goal. And then from there, it goes chicken breast is pretty darn close. And then it drops off pretty fast. So I'll post this in the group and you guys can see it. But at the end of the day, that's for muscle growth. Protein itself, regardless of what source, is going to increase your metabolic rate. It's going to require about 30% of the calories that you eat from that protein just to digest it, whether it's from turkey, chicken, fish, whatever kind of protein it is, it doesn't matter. And so that's why we want you guys to eat more protein. Is 1, it's going to make you full longer, and 2, it's going to help increase your metabolic rate. Fat and carbs require very little energy to break them down and digest them. So when you eat 100 calories from carbohydrates, about 97% of those are going to be either used for energy or stored. and fat is like 100%. So hopefully that answers your question, Miles. And then you also asked, is it easy? It's easier for me to hit fat macros than carb macros, and thoughts on what I could change to switch that up. So he's asking, is it good to eat the ratio of carbs and fat that I have set for you, or can you switch that up to make it better? And the answer is yes, you can switch that up. So you have what are called fast oxidizers, where they eat food and turn it into sugar very fast. Okay. And then you have slow oxidizers. They eat their food and they turn it into sugar very slowly. Both of those things are bad, right? Because you're not going to get enough energy at the time that you need it to sustain, whatever the activity might be. So if you're a fast oxidizer, you want to slow it down. How do you slow it down? You add a little bit more fat. If you're a slow oxidizer, you can speed it up by adding more carbohydrates. And everybody has their own balance of those things that'll make them feel best. And so you just have to play around with it a little bit. Like your body will tell you, when you need a little more fat, and when you need a little bit more carbohydrate, and just go with it. And you might find out that you find a perfect ratio for you that works really well. All right, go-to source for good carbs. Quick and easy, fruit is always a good one. You don't have to do anything with it. You just have to eat it. I will say this, make sure when you're eating fruit, you measure it in grams. You guys hear me say that all the time. The people that are measuring in grams on all the foods they eat are getting results that are ridiculous compared to people that are just putting one medium apple or one large potato or whatever it might be. So measure in grams, but good sources of carbs. Any kind of fruit's going to be great. Rice, jasmine rice, any kind of white rice is really good. It's got a lot of carbs in it, but it's a great source of carbs. It's very non-inflammatory, and it's just a single ingredient food. Any starchy veggies are very good as well. So whenever you're going to eat carbs, make sure that you're always adding fiber with your meals. That's a big deal. Is there a real benefit to walking any more than 10,000 steps a day, or do you get diminishing returns? The benefit is that there's more output, right? More calorie burn. However, I've seen people say that they're getting 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 steps every single day. And to me, that's ridiculous. There's no way in the world you can sustain that. And what'll happen is let's say you're walking 30,000 steps a day and you're on a calorie deficit of like 1,500 calories. You can only sustain that for so long. And when you stop walking that many steps, and you start raising your calories back up, guess what's going to happen? Your metabolic rate is going to slow way down, and you're going to gain weight really fast. So, 10,000 steps is just a target. 15,000 is pretty good. You start getting over that, and it's kind of like, what's the point of that? Unless you're training for a marathon or something like that. So I don't recommend going much more than 15,000. How does drinking 1.5 ounces of alcohol on a normal day and fat loss affect your weight loss? Does it matter? Yes, alcohol will stop your fat loss in its tracks immediately. And so I posted a study in the group. Check that out. It's got references to it, but yeah, it does. It stops your metabolism. Cold turkey. Do cold baths or cold showers impact weight loss, and are they worth doing? I don't know about you, but I don't like sitting in ice. So there's really not a lot of research out there that shows that it's great or it's not. I always say that before you start messing around with stuff like that, make sure that all the basics and the foundational stuff is dialed in. So calories are dialed in, proteins dialed in, sleep, all you guys out there that are sleeping 6 hours a day or less that I see in your reports. That is number one. If your sleep's less than 7.5 hours, man, you are leaving results on the table like you wouldn't believe. Sleep is more powerful than anabolic steroids when it comes to fat loss, muscle gain, recovery, longevity, everything. And so I know it's always, people think, oh, I can get by on 5 hours of sleep a day. You might think you're getting by on it, but when you're older, your body's going to pay the piper. It's going to catch up eventually. So that's a big deal. And once you get all those things dialed in, then you can start adding in little things like cold baths and showers that can add a little bit more to your results. But to do that on top, it's kind of like you're skipping the basics, going to something that's not going to give you a whole lot of benefit. All right, pop quiz. You're at a restaurant. You can order chicken, steak, tuna, salmon, shrimp, or pork. What do you order and why? How would you rank these from best to worst from a protein perspective? You'll see that in the chart that I post. But if it was me, I like steak, so I go steak, but that's me. You can order whatever you want. But here is one caveat with protein. And I see this a lot, and I've got guys that are just protein. I function better on protein. I'm going to eat all protein, no carbs. And what happens with that is they're getting a tremendous load of amino acids that, if they're not balanced out with greens or folate and all the B vitamins and zinc and magnesium, will drive your homocysteine levels through the roof. And homocysteine is an amino acid that, if it's in your blood in high levels, it starts to create inflammatory problems. And in the literature, I'm looking at a study right now, and I'm gonna read it to you. Homocysteine can increase oxidative stress, endothelial dysfunction, inflammation, microglial activation, and is known to be neurotoxic. Homocysteine is classically used to assess the risk of cardiovascular disease, but is now also associated with various mental health disorders and is a known risk factor for dementia. So what does that mean? It means that the standard American diet, which is really high in meat, is driving all of these inflammatory diseases because people aren't balancing out the greens, the leafy vegetables that have folate, and folate is different from folic acid in your supplements. Folic acid is not very good for you. Your body can't metabolize it. So make sure that you're eating your greens, leafy greens, and at a minimum, if you're not doing that, supplement with folate, B6, B9, B12, zinc, and magnesium. So that's a big deal. And I've had clients who are having problems with the protein, and when I look at their homocysteine levels, I'm like, holy shit, it's very high, and their body's holding on to water weight, like rapidly going up because they're inflamed. All right, let's go to the next question. Baldy, should we track seasonings, and do we need to worry about them? Seasonings on your food. So the answer is, in most cases, no. But if you're using seasoning, like I have a Traeger grill, I love to smoke stuff. And there are all kinds of these barbecue seasonings out there that taste great, but when you start looking at the label and it's like apple smoked whatever, or look at the sugar content, and usually number one on that label is sugar first and then all the rest of the stuff. In that case, yes, you need to make sure that you're not overdoing it on the sugar and the calories. Otherwise, not a big deal. Nick says, on rest periods, I'm questioning the strict stopwatch approach and would like some thoughts as to why and why not using that. For me, sometimes I feel I can go harder in the next set by extending the rest period, but sometimes I feel like the interval's too long and I want to dive back in sooner. So the rest breaks that we put in there, they're there for two reasons. One, most people, I'm not saying you guys, not you guys, because you're badasses, but most people, if you go to the gym and you just watch, what are they doing? They're sitting around on their ass looking at their cell phone, right? Tweeting, whatever. And they're sitting there for 10 minutes in between sets. Well, that's not going to get them very good results. So we put those rest breaks in there just to make you keep moving, right? As a general rule, if you're working on strength and you're doing, 5 sets of 5 and you're trying to build as much strength as you can on a lift, longer rest breaks are required. Like, you need that rest break. If you go too soon, your strength's going to drop. So think, if I had you do a set of bench press, and then a set of push-ups, and then a set of flies, and then another set of bench press with no rest, what's going to happen on that 4th set? You're going to be like, God, I can't even move at one time. But if you rested 2 minutes between each set, or a minute, your strength would stay up. So you guys can kind of dictate how long you want to rest based on, whether or not you're feeling strong on each set. But 2 minutes is the max typically, and I'd say a minute is about the minimum. And you don't have to use that rest timer if you don't want to. Michael Mosier asked about the formula for carbs and fats, and can we move those around to make them work best? Yes, I answered that about the fast versus slow oxidizers. G Money says, how can I overcome emotional eating and develop a healthy relationship with food? Well, there's a lot to unpack on something like that. And it really depends on what the emotional trigger is that's driving you to want to go eat. Like, some people have some serious trauma that will drive them to go do things that they normally wouldn't do if those emotions weren't triggered. And so what I try to tell people is there are other things you can do to get a dopamine hit that'll make you feel, you know, calmer or relaxed or feel good in any situation. And it doesn't have to be food. It could be go for a walk. It could be put on some music. It could be, you know, smell some essential oils. It could be draw a picture. Whatever it is that can give you that same state of mind, do that instead. So every time that emotion comes up, instead of going to the refrigerator, which is, it's just a habit, that's what you're used to doing, go, I'm not going to the refrigerator anymore. I'm going to go this way and I'm going to do something different. And then there's another thing out there that it's called tapping. And there's a whole system that you go through. It looks really hokey pokey crazy where you're tapping on your wrists and then tapping, you know, different places on your body. But what that's doing is it's redirecting the emotional pattern that you've developed and creating a new one. And so if anybody's interested in that, I can send them links on how to do it, and it works. You look really silly doing it, but it does work. So that's how you can break those cycles. What are the key factors in maintaining long-term weight loss and avoiding yo-yo dieting? Okay, so this is important. And I see this all the time. And I know a lot of you guys have probably done this, where you've gone on a diet, you've lost a whole bunch of weight, and then you get off the diet and you're like, shit, I just gained back 100 pounds. I gained back 50 pounds, 20 pounds, 10, whatever that number is, you gained it back. And then what do? You go back and do a diet and you do it again and you gain the weight back. And so when you think about a diet and when you look at our fat loss phases, you'll notice that we keep your at least I do, I keep the calories high and then I stair step them down as needed. I don't drop them unless your weight plateaus for at least a week. And that's only if your sleep's dialed in, your workouts are dialed in, your steps are dialed in. We'll stair step down slowly. Now, the key is you've lost all this weight and now your metabolism's down here. That's where putting you into a phase where we slowly start raising your calories back up plays a huge role in whether or not you rebound. So when I start raising your calories, I'm looking at what is your body weight doing each week or every 2 weeks when I add calories. If it stays the same, and in a lot of cases, it actually continues to drop, I'll add a little bit more. And I'm looking at your pictures. If you're really shredded and you got veins popping out of your arms and your biceps and your forearms, and those veins start to go away, I know that I've raised your calories a little too high and your body fat's starting to cover up that vascularity. So I'm going to back you off a little bit. So that's just a little pearl right there, that if you have veins, they disappear, your body fat went up. Okay. So if you reverse or raise your calories after a fat loss phase the right way, you'll get to a maintenance level where your body weight just stays the same. And then you just stay there for as long as you need to, right? Until you decide, hey, I want to do another mini cut. Maybe you want to get a little bit leaner than you are, or maybe you want to go into a gain phase and pack on some muscle. And then we start raising the calories even higher. And then at that point, you're going to gain some fat, just part of the deal, but you're also going to gain a lot of muscle. So hopefully that answers your question, Gerard. The other one is, his last one, what strategies should be employed to prevent overtraining and burnout while pushing the limits of muscular development? Good question. So most of the programs that I build are put in 4-week cycles. So each phase is 4 weeks, and then you'll start a new phase. And you'll notice that week 1, you might start off going, man, this is pretty easy. The sets aren't too bad. The volume, the total number of sets is doable. And then week 2 comes along and you're like, okay, I'm getting maybe a little bit tired. I'm starting to get into a groove. You're pushing a little harder. Week 3, holy shit, he just snuck in a whole bunch of sets on me. Like I added sets to your program. Week 4, oh my God, now there's 5 sets. What's going on here? So I'm slowly ramping up the intensity and the volume. And then you get back to that next phase where week number 1 on the next phase starts and you're like, hey dude, this is too easy. I want more sets and more volume. I do that on purpose because your body's trying to recover. It's trying to recover. Now you're starting to get to that place. So you might feel a little bit overtrained. And boom, I drop the volume and your body overshoots recovery and you get stronger. So there is a reason for that. And so that's one way to avoid overtraining. And then if you overtrain within that model, then you do a deload week. And that's individual to each person. I can't just program a deload week like every 6 weeks for everybody, because that person might not need one. But if you're at the point where you're going into the gym and you're just like, bleh, I don't feel like doing this today. Like legitimately every day you're just going, God, you look at your workout and you're like, fuck, I can't do 5 sets of this. This looks like shit. Versus, you know what it's like when you're like, yeah, I can't wait to do my workout. So if you get to that point where you're just like, blah, your sleep's disrupted, you're not sleeping great, your weight even might start going up a little bit, even though everything's dialed in. That's a good sign of overtraining and inflammation. Then do a deload week. And all you do is you take the week that's programmed for you, you cut the sets in half, and you cut the reps in half. So if it says 4 sets of 10, you're going to do 2 sets of 5. That's it. 1 week of that, you're good. And then you go right back into your program again. So that is how you do deloads. Miles asks, you say drink half your body weight in ounces of water. Is there such a thing as drinking too much water? The amount of water certainly has an effect on the scale the next day. Should we be trying to nail the exact water amount and keep it consistent day to day, or is the minimum half your body weight in ounces? As a general rule, half your body weight in ounces is a good general rule. Some people can go more, some people can go less. The answer to your question about can you drink too much? Yeah, you can. People have died from drinking too much water. But in most of those cases, they drank like, whatever, 5 gallons of water in 10 minutes or something stupid like that for these water challenges. Well, of course, I mean, if you drank that much alcohol, you would die too. So it's a general rule. If your body is retaining water weight when you get on the scale, when you start drinking water, it's most of the time it's because you were super dehydrated, right? And if you're dehydrated, your body's 80% water. So if you're dehydrated, now you might be 60% water, right? And when you start drinking it and it starts to hydrate you, of course, your weight's going to go up. Your muscles fill up with water. Same thing if you take creatine. When you take creatine, it's going to pull more water into the cell and your weight's going to go up. It's not a bad thing. If you went and got on a scanner, one of those bioimpedance scanners, after you had all that water, it's going to say you lost a shit ton of body fat and gained muscle, because now it's reading the increase in water mass as muscle mass. So that's how the water thing works. And if you continue to retain water after, let's say, 10 days of drinking your target, then you have a mineral imbalance, right? You don't have enough salt, you don't have enough potassium, or they're not in the right amount. And instead of the water making it inside the cell, it's staying outside the cell, creating inflammation. And you'll see that as kind of puffiness. Maybe in your eyes, you'll see puffiness. You might see it in your forearms. So if that's the case, then you want to add some Celtic sea salt or Redmond's real salt to your water. Not a lot, just a pinch. That stuff's way better than all these bullshit electrolyte drinks that you're paying, $5 a serving for. Just get some regular Redmond's sea salt and put that in your water and you're good to go. Jeff Hammond asks, it would be great to walk through how you put together workouts in a cut phase versus a build phase and what prompts you to make changes, adjustments, etc. I just pull them up and blow through them, but wanted to understand the science around it. Okay, the answer to that question is both of those phases can use the exact same workout. The difference is going to be in a build phase where you're in a calorie surplus. We can really push the volume a little bit higher because now you've got enough calories on board to account for the extra volume. In a cut phase, if you pushed it to the limit and you're in a calorie deficit, your body's not going to have enough of the materials it needs to recover and rebuild. So, but the same program can be used for both. The difference between what we'll do is typically in a gain phase, we'll reduce your steps a little bit because your goal is to gain weight. So there's no sense in doing 15,000 steps a day and then eat, unless you like to eat more calories. But I've got guys that are around 4,000 calories. They can't eat more than that. That's like, it sounds like fun, but it's not. It's a full-time job. So rather than bump their calories higher, I'm like, all right, let's just drop your steps a little bit. So that's one way to, reduce the output so that the calories are there. So that's how we manipulate between phases. It's usually the output that we manipulate and the calories we'll manipulate, but the programming can be pretty much the same. Robin asks, why 10,000 steps? Could we just do low impact stationary cycling and get the same desired result as walking? Yes, the answer is yes. You could do any activity you want as long as it's the equivalent activity of walking 5 miles. And there are charts out there. I think Johnny W gave me a chart that was pretty cool that had the equivalent for all kinds of different things. I don't know how accurate it is for things like badminton or stuff like that, but I know Gerard likes to play badminton, so he might be able to figure that out. But the answer is yes. The only reason we use steps and we say 10,000 is because we can track it easily. There's really no way to track consistently across the board with everybody all these other activities. Like if you were playing badminton, we don't have a badminton tracker, right? I don't know how you do that. So that's why. But yes, you could do other things. And if you're in the challenge and you're like, well, I'd rather ride my Peloton. I don't want to, don't quote me on this, but the conversion is like 12 to 13 miles is equivalent to like 5 miles of walking. you could do that and still click off your walk to get the points. Okay. So Sean Lyle, bro, I'm not even going to answer this question. All right, next. All right, well, I'll answer. I'll tell you. Is marching in place, could we use that? And I guess, I don't know. I don't ever march in place. I don't like to just stand still. I like to move forward. So you could try it and see. You'd probably have to march in place for about double the time of walking, because you're not pushing off on anything, right? You're just kind of going up and down with your feet. It's kind of like walking on a treadmill. Walking on a treadmill is different from walking on the ground. When you're on a treadmill, the treadmill's moving underneath you and all you're doing is picking up your feet like this, right? But when you're walking on the ground, you're moving yourself away from the ground, which requires a lot more energy. But if you do march in place, put on ankle weights. When does a brief pause, this is from Kendall, when does a brief pause to shake it out before completing the last few reps become a rest break in between short sets? Kendall, are you on the call?
I am.
Can you show us what you mean by shake it out?
Just, like that. Sometimes, like, I don't know how important it is. Like, if I increase the weight and I just want to get those final 2 reps of the set.
Right, but I know that, but I want to see you shake it out. Just show us. Like, is that like, I'm just kidding. All right, so to answer that question, when you're doing a set, let's say you're doing dumbbell bench press, and you crank out 8 reps and you're like, God, my arms, my chest is starting to burn. You know you could get a couple more, but you're burning like crazy. What I'll do is I'll do those 8 reps, and I'm going to stop at the top for a second. I'm going to take about 3 deep breaths, and then boom, I'm going to bang out a couple more and I'm done. Right. But if you just stop, set the weights down, that's it. That's a rest break. So as long as you're hanging on to them, you're okay. All right. This is from Andrew. Hold on a second here. All right, from Andrew. What is your opinion on doing extra work in addition to the current programming? For example, I don't have a workout on Wednesdays, but I decide to go to the gym regardless. Should we be strict and not do any extra work, or is it okay to do the extra work? I always say don't do more than what's programmed for you. And the reason why is that you'll end up doing too much and getting diminishing returns. So the only time I would say yes, you could do more work is like if you're doing recovery work, right? So foam rollers, stretching, yoga, things like that are really good. But I would not do extra workouts unless I've only got you scheduled for 3 times a week and you're kind of in the beginning and you're like, hey, I think I could do another day. Or maybe you're at 4 times a week and you're like, hey, I think I could go to 5 days. Then you could do that. But Andrew, your program is freaking hardcore. So to add more into it, I wouldn't recommend that. Okay.
Yeah, you had me at 4 this week. So, and I was just like, the challenge has been extra motivating. So I was like, I don't know,
Yeah.
just go there. Even though I didn't take it off, it's just feeling the urge, I guess.
But think about your programs prior. You had 5 days a week and they were hardcore. So sometimes I'll go in cycles where I'm like, I'm going to beat the shit out of Andrew 5 days a week. And then I'm like, all right, I've been beating on him pretty good. Let's drop him to 4 days a week, give him a little bit of rest. Your body's going to overshoot that and you're going to get even stronger. And then we could go back into 5 days a week. But more is not always, think about it like this too. More is not always better in terms of volume. I would rather see quality sets where you're pushing the limit on what you can do on each set. And 3 sets where you push to the max is going to give you much better results than doing 6 sets of just kind of going through the motions, right? So its intensity is important. And there are a lot of professional bodybuilders out there that will tell you that, you read all their stuff and they're like, oh, they train 40 sets up for their biceps and 40 sets for their triceps in one workout 3 times a day. Bullshit, they don't. Those guys, most of them are training 4 days a week, maybe 5, but they're training like zombies. So watch Arnold's documentary, Pumping Iron. It's an old one. It's fantastic. And you'll see those guys, what they're doing. They're doing drugs too, don't get me wrong. But that would allow them to train even more often. And they still found out that they don't do that. They want to pull back a little bit.
Oh yeah, I've watched Pumping Iron like 17 times already. It's like my Bible.
It's hilarious. It's funny as heck. His new documentary is really good too. He's pretty funny. All right. So your other question was, what are my thoughts about being in a deficit for too long and what's considered a long time? And I think I answered that earlier about if you're in that deficit too long, your body's going to match. It's going to slow down your metabolic rate and match whatever level you're at. And if you plateau at that level for more than a week or two, now you need to just get out of it. Like you're not going to get any benefit from staying there, other than you're not giving your body enough fuel and you'll start losing muscle. And the bottom end on calories, just as a general rule, the bottom end on calories for most people, for men, is around 1,400. Depends on their body weight. And for women, it's about 1,200. So when I see people eating less than that, I'm like, it's a recipe for disaster. It's not good. All right, so that's all the questions that you guys asked. So I'm going to open it up to answer any questions or talk about what we just talked about in more depth if you want. So if you have a question, just speak up.
Hey, Steve, these are some follow-ups. One on what's the alternative to MyFitnessPal for better accuracy?
I like the tracker that's built into the Supra app.
Okay.
And I can send you, if you guys want to use that, if anybody's not using it, you want to try it, I'll sync it up. I'll switch you over to that, and then I'll send you instructions on how to use it. It works a little bit differently in terms of how you enter your foods, which can be a little frustrating if you're used to MyFitnessPal. It's just like learning a new software, right? You got to go, well, the steps are a little bit different, but once you figure it out, it works really, really well, and it doesn't glitch, and you don't have to go outside the app. It's all in-house. And there's a really cool recipe feature in there as well that will give you recipes built on your macros, like hundreds of them. They're really, really good, super healthy. You can filter them out for different things that you don't want in your food or things that you do. And you don't have to add the recipe to your journal. You just hit, I ate this, boom, it puts the whole thing in there for you. So people with families, man, those recipes are great for dinner when you can get your wife and kids involved, or your husband and your kids, and they can look at it and go, I like this one, let's pick this one. And now you're getting what you need. And then they're also benefiting because they're eating healthier. Instead of you having to make your own food, which I hear a lot with families. It's like, it's a pain in the ass at dinner time. So yeah.
And oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask your thoughts on pre-workouts, and then also maybe juice cleanse or detox cleanse, things like that, to help kind of flush things out every once in a while.
Detox, worthless. Pre-workout, caffeine, pure caffeine, 200 milligrams. Don't go any higher than that. And make sure that you do that only up to 10 a.m. If you work out in the evening, do not use caffeine or pre-workout. I would say if you work out after 12 p.m., don't do it, because caffeine has a half-life of about 10 to 12 hours. So if you use it after noon, you're going to be up at midnight going, God, why can't I sleep? Jeff, finish your question.
Yeah, just the fat carb, a couple questions there. As I'm going through the build, I'm finding I'm going over my fat and not hitting my carb. So you may have touched on, I know fruit, rice, but like, what are kind of the carb heavier, fat lighter carbs to focus on?
Are you not hitting your carbs because you're not sure what to eat, or because you just like fat better than carbs?
I mean, I'm just trying different things, and then I get to the end of the day, and
okay, yeah, in a build
so
phase,
maybe I'm having sweet potato fries instead of sweet potatoes, and it's as simple as that. But
yeah, so in a build phase, when your calories and your carbs start going high, I like to use rice, jasmine rice. It's just super clean. It's really easy to make, and it's easy to eat, right? I could pound that stuff down. That's probably the highest level of carbs for any food that's out there in terms of volume. Fruits are good too, but fruits, let's say you're eating watermelon or strawberries or something like that. You could eat a gigantic bowl of them and not get much carbohydrate out of it. It just doesn't have a lot of calories. It's not real dense. So if you look on that list of single ingredient foods that I gave you, you'll see the carb sources on there, and the top ones are pretty good. Yeah, Kendall, oats are pretty good too, but oatmeal has a lot of fat in it and protein for the volume. So you got to watch that if you're pounding oats. Does that answer your question, Jeff?
Thanks.
Sean, what's up?
Hey, what's up, Steve? Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So what is there a time or place or a difference between static stretching and dynamic stretching, or is there a place for it?
Yeah. So if you're going to do a workout, I like to use dynamic stretching and dynamic warm-ups prior to doing heavy lifts. Okay. And the reason why is that you're stretching the muscle while you're moving. So your body gets used to the extended length or the extra length that you're putting the muscle into. Right. And versus if you did a static stretch and you just stretched your hamstrings out really long and held and held and held, and then you did a whole body thing like that, right? All these stretches. Then you went to work out. Now your muscles are lengthened, but your brain doesn't really have anything to attach that to. So you go to do a squat and you pull something. Right. So what I do when I'm warming up, I'll do a set of squats with whatever light weight I put on there, and I'll just hold the bottom of that squat and just sit in it for a while. Right. Just kind of get loosened up, get my back loosened up. So I'll use the actual lift to do the stretch. Maybe a bar, maybe you're doing bench press. I'll just let it sit on my chest, kind of move the bar around a little bit, stretch it out, and then just kind of work through a few reps like that. But both are important. They're both good. Just depends on when. So static stretching would be great before bed.
Okay, that makes sense. Because we've always been told not to. It's weird. We have, people who think they know fitness and they tell us don't do that before this because it's bad for you. Don't ever do the static stretch and do the dynamic stretch, and misinformation a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. It's kind of like giving somebody drugs, right? Sometimes it might work well, sometimes it might not work well. It depends on the situation, but they're both good. You just gotta, I wouldn't go stretch the heck out of my body and then do a workout with weights if I'm going heavy, unless it was more movement based.
Okay, thanks.
Wally.
Hey, Steve, two things. One, I think Robin had a question that popped up you may have missed in the chat. So just trying to take care of another teammate here. But for my own question, with arthritis and stuff, sometimes I wonder, can I do or should I do, a good weight would push more reps versus trying to go heavier. So I get tugged in those two different directions. Thoughts on that?
Depends on if it's osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. Osteoarthritis is pretty much bone on bone, and to push heavy weights with that would not be good.
Yeah.
Rheumatoid arthritis, it really depends on how your body responds to it. If you create more inflammation, that's going to create more problems. So what I would do is I would use wrist wraps, so that you're not trying to grip the bar so hard. You can let the wrist wrap kind of do it, or maybe even hooks. I've got some when I broke my wrist. I had a wrist wrap that had a metal hook on it, so I could just hook the bar and do stuff like that.
Okay.
So yeah, picking up dumbbells and things like that when your hands hurt and your joints are achy, it just makes it worse. So machine training is a lot better, because then you can push it to the limit, but you're not using your hands to do it.
I'm not having to hold the weight with. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't forget Robin. She's in the chat. Thanks.
All right. So you're good. Robin, where's Robin? I don't even see her on here.
Hey, Steve.
There she is.
Hey, I had a question about if you had thoughts on AG1, and then my other question is in regards to pizza. I think I posted it. I don't think you mentioned it today though, but like if you know that you're planning for a big weekend meal or something where you're going out.
Good point. I've totally skipped that. So to answer your question on that. So her question was, if you know you're going to eat pizza, or if you know you have an event coming up on a weekend, let's say, can you adjust your calories during the week? And the answer is absolutely. That's what you want to do. So if you have an event, or even around the holidays, right? It's Thanksgiving dinner, I'm going to eat my face off. Then adjust your calories during the week. And I tell people that your daily calorie intake, if you go over or go under and go over and go under, it's not that critical. It's the weekly average that matters most. So if you're going to eat pizza on the weekend, figure out, how much you want to eat. You want to eat the whole pizza, half the pizza, whatever it is, and then reduce the amount of calories you're eating during the week by that number. So maybe it's 200 calories per day, Monday through Saturday, right? That gives you 1,200 extra calories that you could bank on Sunday. and still come out and hit your goal. Now, on Monday, you might weigh a little bit more because you had more volume, but that doesn't mean you gain fat weight. Does that make sense?
And it does. And on that same token, so let's say you like wake up this morning, you're like, oh crap, I found out I'm going to go eat pizza tonight because of X, Y, and Z. It doesn't really matter if I've not banked the week. I can instead bank today and just make smarter choices in the morning.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then your question about AG1, I'm not a big fan of the kitchen sink supplements because they put so much stuff in the supplement, and some of it may or may not be good for you. Like they'll put herbs in there, they'll put just a whole bunch of, they'll throw everything in there, right? You name it, it's in there. And some people don't do well with some of those herbs. And some people don't do well with some of the greens or some of the things that are in there. They could have food intolerances or what have you. So I'm not a big fan of those. And then the other problem is if you try to put everything in one supplement, you're not getting enough of any one thing for it to make a big difference, right? It's like they just put a little smidge of it in there and say, oh, it's on the label, but it's not enough. You know, you have a physiological effect and a pharmacological effect. And if you give somebody a physiological dose of something, but they need more of it, it's not going to have any effect on them. So I would rather see you target with specific deficiencies that you have versus throwing everything at it and hoping that it covers the deficiencies. Does that make sense? Did we lose Robin?
Yes, that makes sense. Sorry, I went off mute.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Yep. Paul, what's your question?
So, weird question. When, if ever, does it end? Like, do we ever leave the program, or is it just continuous for life?
You're in for life, brother. Can never leave. Yeah. So, you know, I think the question you're asking is, how long do you have to live like this, right? And the question is forever. Like, it's never ending. You don't just get to a certain point and go, man, I look great naked, but now I'm just going to stop working out. Because then you're going to get out of the shower and you're going to ask your girlfriend, hey, does this outfit make me look fat? You get that? You didn't even get my joke. Brent.
Yeah, one thing before my question, we talked about the supplements. But when you had me take that urine test and send it in and get samples, and you recommended the vitamins, that was big for me. So I don't know if anybody else wants to do that, but that really helped me. And I do feel I have more energy and stuff like that, Steve. So thank you for.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And so when you're looking at supplementation, we can look at the pathways in your body and we can see where is the pathway not functioning properly, and then determine why it's not functioning properly. And 99% of the time, different pathways in the system aren't functioning properly because there's a deficiency in something that's not allowing one thing to turn into the next to the next. So it backs up. So it's either the promoter of creating that completion of the pathway is missing, or there's inhibitors that are blocking the pathway, heavy metals, toxins, all that kind of stuff. And that's, you know, outside of using a really good multivitamin and fish oil and maybe a probiotic, there's no way to tell somebody what they need specifically unless you look at blood chemistry and lab work.
Yeah, that was really helpful. So thank you for that. You should take advantage of it if you want to. Question for you is, non-alcoholic beer, is it BS or is it legit?
No.
I actually like the taste of beer, but I don't need the alcohol.
It's legit, man. It's just beer without the alcohol in it, and it's totally fine. You know, when I was a kid growing up, when I started training when I was about 12, and I had a trainer, and he would tell me after every workout, he goes, all right, you need to drink a non-alcoholic beer. And maybe he was trying to groom me, I don't know, but it just stuck. And I said, why? And he goes, because it has carbonation in it and has some carbs in it. It's going to help you to recover faster. And so, you know, I don't know if that's true or not. It was probably bullshit, but I drank non-alcoholic beer for quite a while when I was in college. And, you know, it's if you're one of those guys that you like beer and you like to have a drink in your hand, it's fine. Yeah, no downside to it. I lost my mouse, just died on me, so I can't figure out why, but if anybody has their hand up, I can't scroll through. So just unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hey,
Steve,
Steve,
this-
you
oh,
oh,
Go ahead.
you
go
go
ahead.
ahead. You go.
I know I was a workout question here. You know, I've always worked out kind of before I started, Supra with that first set, kind of starting to like a little bit lighter weight, then kind of increase slowly through the sets. And I've really tried to kind of push the intensity, and, typically that I was using 70s for the last set. I would start with that and say it's like 3 sets of 10. First set I get, second set I barely squeak out 10. Is it better to reduce the weight for the third set just to get all 10, or should I keep the same weight knowing I'm going to get, I don't know, 7? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would keep the same weight. And then on that last set, if you get 7, just track that. And then the next time you do it, stay with that weight and try to get that last set of 10. And then when you get 10 on that one, then you can go up.
Gotcha. That's kind of what I've been doing. Just want to make sure that was right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, Steve, I got something for you.
You bet.
So you talked about hydration, right? So I've been doing a lot of field exercises, and the medics have been feeding us down our throats. It's called drip drop, fast dehydration relief. I don't know if you ever heard of this or not. I'll send you a picture and some ingredients in it. And they're feeding it to us a lot. We used to get some of the stuff in the MREs. It was like a Gatorade, basically.
Yep.
But now they're going to this stuff. And this stuff.
Send me a link with the label or something, so I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, it almost makes your water, it's still water, but it makes it feel like it's thickened. It is so weird. But they're feeding this to us like candy now, and I don't even know if it's good for us.
Probably has some Anavar, some Trenbolone in it, some anabolic steroids, but they're beefing you guys up for war. Yeah, send me the label. Send me the label.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
Yeah. So one off of hydration, is it good to have like there's Gatorade and then there's Gatorade Zero, right? Like it's like a diet Gatorade.
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, I would.
Is that good or just drink water?
I would just look at that like you were drinking flavored water.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And there's actually some studies on that they're kind of funny, that go back to when they first made that stuff, and it was all a marketing deal, right? I think for Miami University or something like that. But anyway, it doesn't really do anything.
Okay.
Dr. O, what's your question?
Hey, how you doing?
What's up, brother?
Good to see you. I'm fine. I missed the earlier part of the call, so just in case you may have said this already, but I hope you're going to send out a recording. This is like gold.
Yes, I am. If I can
like,
get
awesome.
my mouse to work, I've got my mouse died on me. I think my computer froze, so I can't move.
No worries.
But I should be able to send a recording out.
Cool. So here's my question. I'm African, I'm Nigerian, and our foods are like not single ingredient, single item ingredient or single ingredient foods. What advice do you give for, people who eat a lot of ethnic food? I mean, right now I've just not eaten a lot of it, barely. Now I would say my wife tends to eat a little healthier, doesn't put as much oils in there, but still, you can't necessarily estimate what's in there. So down the road, when I'm sort of at the maintenance phase, how do you incorporate foods that aren't easy to measure?
That's a good question. It's whenever you have something that's kind of like a casserole based, where it's just got a whole bunch of different stuff in it, it's very, very hard to estimate what's in that. But when you get to that point where you've been measuring your food long enough, and you have a really good idea of how much is in a chicken breast, like you could see it and go, that's 6 ounces, or that's 30 grams of peanut, like you'll know. And at that point, if you're lean and fit and you eat something like that, you're going to know you're going to feel it in your body. Like you're going to go, I think I'm gaining a little bit of weight. I'm eating too much, and you'll back off. Right? Like you just know. It's like inherently, if you eat ice cream every night and you start to gain a little bit of weight, all you have to do is stop eating the ice cream for a few days, your weight will go back down. Or you'll know how to mix it in and not gain weight like once a week or whatever. And the same thing will happen with the food you're talking about. So you
so it's
need
really
to measure
going to be.
Yeah, you're not going to measure forever.
Yeah,
like that's not realistic.
It's really just sort of getting a feel for your foods and quantities and.
Correct.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep. Paul, did you have another question?
No, I don't know. No, sorry. I don't know why it's
Okay, I
raised.
can't put
Sorry
your
about
hand
that.
down because my mouse is frozen. Anybody else have any questions? We're right at the hour mark, and I think my recording's gonna probably die here. So if you have a question, let me know. If not, I'll end this and then I'll post the recording. And I'm gonna try to get it. If you guys put questions in the chat box, I can't get into it because my mouse is dead. So I'm gonna try to figure out why it died. It's not the battery.
Hey, Steve, Andrew here.
Yeah.
Just a quick little fun question for you. You said sometimes when you're going to do squats or whatever, you'll warm up with some lightweight. Just curious, what's the lightweight consideration for you?
Well, I don't do traditional squats. I only do belt squats. So it's kind of hard to make an equation like, what's that weight look like? I would say if I compared it to traditional squats back when I did heavy squats, it'd probably be like, I'd start with 135 and maybe just sit in that for a little bit.
So like comparing to like the working sets, like what would you consider it lightweight to be versus what your working sets would be? Sorry, maybe my question wasn't clear first time.
Are you asking what my working weight would be?
Yeah, like for example, for me, like if I'm squatting 315 and 4.5, what would you say to do as a warm up
135.
weight? Okay.
Yeah, 135 would be good. Yeah. Any other questions? Going once. Going twice. Sold. All right, I'll send out the recording on this sometime today after it processes. And if you guys have any other questions, just message me.
Amazing call. Thank
you so much.
Okay,
Yes,
you
this
guys
was
have a
amazing.
good day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Rock it out. Gosh, darn it, what is going on with my mouse? There we go. Oh yeah, come on, baby.